Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? All right, perfect. First of all, thank you for coming. Appreciate you heading out into the public. Couple things that I would first like to emphasize for everyone in the community. We do realize that this is a very anxious time for everybody, not just our students and our staff and our parents, but for the entire city, for the entire state, and for the entire country. And one of our goals is, as we work through the many questions that are starting to pop up as a result of the proclamations, recommendations, school closures, and so forth, is to be as open and honest and transparent as possible. And as soon as we have decisions, as soon as we have information, we will push that out to you as quickly as we possibly can. Essentially what I'm saying is we will stay in close contact with all of you so that as soon as we know information, you will know information. A number of things have taken place. The last 5 days have been felt like 50, but there's been a lot going on from a school district perspective. I want the community to take comfort in knowing that we do have a team in place here that are working on a number of the questions that are starting to pop up as a result of this virus. Let me begin by stating, first and foremost, my best wishes, and those wishes on behalf of the school board, for everyone to remain healthy. That's our goal with everything that we're trying to accomplish here as a school district. We're trying to maintain the health of our learning community as well as the broader community, and be responsible citizens so that we do the right thing, and so that as a nation we can navigate these uncharted waters of the coronavirus as successfully as possible. Some of the questions that we are currently working on as a school district, some of the higher order questions. First and foremost, we're making sure that all of our buildings are getting a very, very deep clean. We know this virus lasts 72 hours, and every time we have administrators and individuals that are working through the building, we come right back in with the cleaning team and work with that. I will say after today that our administrative team will be working from remote sites so that we're not contaminating our buildings. But again, the cleanliness and the sanitation of our buildings is a top priority for us. Our custodians will continue working through this outbreak for however long it lasts, with the idea of cleaning and doing more cleaning, and that's our goal moving forward with that. The second piece is it's very important for us to know that now that our students are out for an additional 3 weeks beyond our spring break, that we have to find some sort of accommodation for academic enhancement and continued learning opportunities for our students. So what we've done as a system is we've broken down all the challenges and all the questions that we have as a school system into separate projects. And our very first project is to engage our curriculum team to develop materials and resources so that our students can continue with their learning in some capacity. We realize it's not going to look like a classroom, feel like a classroom. It's not going to be paced at the same level of a classroom, but the idea is to provide engaging learning opportunities for our students during this extended period of time away from school. We're treating it no differently than typically what you would see over the summer, where we provide opportunities to prevent that summer learning loss. We would like to prevent the learning loss over the course of the next 3-week period of time so that our students, when they come back, and we're very hopeful that they do come back, will be able to hit the ground running and move forward. So we have a team working on that right now. The biggest issue we want to make sure is equity. We have to make sure that all of our students either have access to the internet or access to a cell phone, so that we can push out information. Could be as simple as, here's a book that we would like you to read, here's some thoughtful questions that you as parents could ask your child. Things like that we need to continue managing, as well as some higher order lessons that would come with regard to potential high school courses and things of those on those particular issues. So what we have to do is we have to take a look at our current providers. So we have our technology department taking a close look at what is some of the free internet access that is currently being offered by local providers. We're going to ask them what that means. What does that look like for our families, and if there's any way that can help enhance our opportunities to reach as many students and as many families as possible. At the end of the day, if we have to, the good old-fashioned way of picking up the telephone and just calling people and letting them know what they can do and how they could be helpful to continue the learning of their children is something we will do. So we will use all the means at our disposal to continue education in a framework that is as close to what we can do normally in a classroom learning environment. So academic engagement is something that we're working on very clearly. The other piece that's very important to us is from an employee perspective, how are we managing pay? Everyone is very concerned about, well, if we're out of work for 4 weeks, what is that going to look like for my paycheck? We're very cognizant of the fact that we have a number of individuals that have mortgage payments, rent payments, student loans, things of that nature. And we're working on a whole host of potential solutions to these problems as we move forward. We're checking with officials with the IRS to make sure that we have an understanding of what all the IRS rules are when it comes to work. There will also be I believe a Zoom session at noon today with Iowa Workforce Development where we can get some sense of what the rules of the road are going to be moving forward when it comes to unemployment compensation. And once we gather all those facts and have all the information that we need, we will certainly make a determination that will be as helpful as possible to our employees moving forward. I wish I could give them an answer today as to what that's going to look like, but especially for our hourly employees, the employees that are paid only when they're here, we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that we help them weather this particular storm in a whole host of contexts. But there's more information that we're developing along the way. But I do expect in the next 1 to 2 days that we will have an answer for them. And I know it's an anxious time, and patience is something that's hard to come by when the bills start coming in, but we'll do everything we can in the next couple of days to help them navigate those particular issues. With our teachers, we have to make a decision on what we're going to do with school days. Certainly we're going to utilize them to some degree over the course of the next 3 weeks with regard to student instruction. Our curriculum department is currently working on plans as to how best to utilize our teaching staff during that 3-week period of time, but knowing that we have to keep our options open in the event that the school year does become extended, honoring the teacher contract and figuring out how we have to utilize those teacher days within the contract. So we need to have some flexibility with that, but we hope again to have some answers over the course of the next couple of days. In addition to teachers, one of the topics that has come up is the notion of preschool and daycare. Perhaps you heard coming out of Des Moines last night, the idea is we're trying to figure out a system or a way to provide daycare services for first responders. That is something that goes well beyond what we normally would have with our children's village and our daycare responsibilities. However, we do know that at this moment in time, this has become a state priority. So we'll be meeting this afternoon with various agencies, have a conversation with the mayor in a little while to see how we can sync with the city to make a determination of how the school district can be supportive of the broader Davenport community when it comes to first responders who have children who need to be taken care of. So again, our societal responsibilities go well beyond just our learning community, and we intend to engage with all of our partners locally as well as at the state level to help out in that vein. The other piece that we have that we're working on right now is we know a number of people perhaps didn't prepare for this. Could be anywhere from teachers to parents to students. There might be some students that have left some medication behind in their schools. There may be some students that left their Chromebook behind in their classroom or in their locker. We are currently working on a system where each building will have a protocol that will allow for a student or a parent to do a drive-up at a prearranged time, and just as if you were driving through the drive-through at a fast food store, we'll have your package and bag ready to go, and you'll be able to pick up whether it's your Chromebook, your medicine, whatever the case is. But under no circumstances will the public be allowed in our schools. Our schools will be empty, so please don't come to our schools thinking that we're going to have an opportunity to have a conversation with you. Our email system is working fine. Our principals are working full-time. They're taking questions literally minute by minute as we are here in this center to stay engaged with our parents. But we will have an opportunity for students to or parents to come in and pick up materials that perhaps were left behind, who perhaps not anticipating this lengthy period of time where we don't have school, we can help manage that particular piece. couple other things that we have, and I think this is a very important point, and I would like to share a little bit of good news. We are fortunate as a school district. We are well practiced in delivering meals, free and reduced meals to our students. We do so every summer. We have a system in place, we have a protocol in place, and we are all geared up and ready to go to start delivering meals for our students next week. We have a plan to actually have sack meals for students to pick up. Again, they won't be coming into a building. They won't be going to one of our cafeterias to sit down and eat, but they will be able to drive up to locations that will be determined over the course of the next day or two to pick up their free and reduced meals to make sure that children that are in need continue to be fed. And that's an important function of ours as a school district, and we will continue to do that. And as I mentioned, we're fortunate as a very large school district to already have that operation in place, and we've already been gearing it up this week, and we're ready to go for that. So hopefully people in the community will take comfort from that. The other piece that I think is very important is we're just identifying who are the key personnel pieces that really have to continue coming to work to make sure that as a district we continue to function in a reasonable fashion. Obviously, I will continue to work as the superintendent. My main job will be communication. I'll just be honest with you, making sure that internal communication and external communication is as efficient and as effective as possible moving forward. The one thing I've learned is that this is an extremely fluid situation and it changes by the hour. Had a Zoom meeting this morning with new information. We have another Zoom meeting this afternoon with new information. I'm sure the governor and the folks in Des Moines always have new information to provide us. When we have that information, that will come directly from the superintendent's office, and we'll be sharing that as best we possibly can with you on that. I believe that covers all the issues that, in terms of the actual projects and the issues that are first and foremost on our mind. One of the things I will say is that spring break has ended up being a double-edged sword for us, in the sense that people were planning on being out this week, but at the same time, while it gave us an opportunity to do some planning for next week, we do have a number of people that are out for spring break, so it's not all hands on deck for us. And compliments to the team that has stayed in Davenport. Appreciate their help and their willingness to continue working so that we can continue to serve our students during this time of uncertainty in where we stand. But right now, the decision has been made. We will be out for a month. We've taken the governor's recommendation. The local county health officials have also recommended that we close down for a month. We will heed that advice. We will do so, but at the same time, that brings up a whole host of challenges, which I just listed for you here. That's what we're working on right now. The reality of it is we still have more questions than we have answers, but I'm hoping within the next day or two, and definitely by the end of the week, most of the questions, especially the ones that I just outlined for you, will be answered. So with that said, I'd be happy to take any questions that you may have that if I didn't cover, or if you need some clarification, certainly.
So for the end date of school, is it still on time for now, but it might get pushed back, or could you clarify that?
So right now the end date is still current for the first week of June. However, we're exploring our opportunities depending on where things go. We honestly don't know. Right now we're looking at, hopefully this is just a little 4-week phenomenon. We could take advantage of perhaps eliminating some professional development days for teachers. Perhaps our early release days may have to come to an end. Doing whatever we can to make up this lost learning time. It could include an extension of a week. I doubt 2 weeks, but perhaps 2 weeks at the end of the school year. We'll make that determination a little bit farther along once we know how the next couple of weeks are progressing. But it's certainly a topic for discussion.
With the way the next couple of weeks are progressing, are you guys prepared to close for longer than a month?
We're preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, I guess is the best way to do that. But we're optimistic that with the measures that we're taking locally as a school system, as well as in Davenport, continued and statewide across the nation, hopefully we'll be over the hump in a month, and that's the hope.
Do you know how many students will be receiving that free and reduced lunch starting next week?
So approximately 64% of our students are eligible for free and reduced lunch, and we'll be prepared to make accommodations for every single one of those.
Will it be at one specific school or every school that the kids will?
It might not be every single school, but it'll certainly be multiple locations. And we'll broadcast what those locations are.
In your
Yes.
conversations with parents and teachers, how would you
It's changed quite a bit, I would say, in the last 4 to 5 days or so. It was more of a, sort of a business as usual piece, but I think obviously in the last 4 to 5 days when you're seeing more significant national and state decisions being made to, to close venues, across the river, you can't go to a restaurant anymore for dine-in. I think people are taking this seriously, and it's my hope that, and what I'm seeing so far is that people are saying, what can we do to help? We certainly don't want to make things worse. No one's pointing fingers, no one's casting blame. We're getting a whole host of suggestions from staff as well as parents. We're taking a look at all of those. Like the rest of the world, trying to do the best we can with this, and I'm sensing an element of community that's coming together to get us through this, and I'm very pleased by that, and we're all willing to do our part, and as a school system, we realize that we have a responsibility that extends to a much broader community, and we accept that responsibility, but I'm very pleased that anxiousness is also translating into what can I do? How can we help? And I think people heeding the warnings from whether they're the health officials or other state officials, we're starting to see that. I drove in this morning and there were very few cars on the road. So I think people are really paying attention to what's happening right now, and that's quite heartening as a citizen.
Is it frustrating for you as a superintendent to have to do this when Davenport schools have had their struggles here in the past and are kind of coming over that hump like we talked about a little while ago, and now a little bit of a setback again? How does that feel?
It's an interesting question. I had a very large meeting with my staff last week Friday, and we're battle hardened here in Davenport. We've gone through quite a bit over the last few years, and this is a community that knows how to roll up its sleeves and get things done. And this is another example of something where we have to figure it out. We'll get it done. We will come out the other end of this, and we just have to weather this storm similar to the other storms that we've had. But this community is very hardened and willing to help. It's a community that comes together, but at the end of the day, it's a very strong community.
So you mentioned teacher contract days and quarters of like they were not being extended. Can you explain what that means, especially since yesterday it was announced that we like that school could require to take out those days?
Right. So our teacher contract days extend into, more than 191 days. If our teachers aren't engaged in fulfilling their contract over the next 3.5 weeks, they still have those days that are part of their contract. So what that does is it gives us flexibility of what are those work days, and let's identify what those work days are. I strongly suspect that over the next 3 weeks we will be asking our teachers to do some elements of teacher work with regard to engaging our students and keeping their minds as active as possible over the next 3 weeks. If we have to extend our school days, we certainly won't go beyond the teacher contract days, but at least if we have those days in the bank because they haven't been working the last, let's say, 2.5, 3 weeks, we'll have that opportunity available to schedule those days if we need to.
Have you guys considered online courses?
So it's not so much online courses. Certainly we have that capability. The bigger issue is access. I'll just be honest with you. From an equity perspective, not every single family has the ability to access online courses via a computer because perhaps they don't have an internet connection to their home. The last thing we want to do is, typically we would say if you don't, we'll help you out with, we have a small amount of mobile hotspots, but certainly not enough to cover a large portion of our student body, and the last thing I want to do is send them to Starbucks or whatever the case is. One option that we are considering is we have a Wi-Fi capacity around all of our schools that extends into the parking lots. I know it sounds rather pedestrian, but if someone needs to have some access to the internet to connect to either a curriculum or an announcement of some kind, we will be using our school sites as mobile hotspots so that families could at least drive into the parking lot, not have to come into the school, not have to spread any germs, but at least be able to connect to the internet, and we have a filtering system for that. So we're working to figure out how we can expand that to multiple sites. We know we can do it here at the ASC. We're hopeful that we can do the same by just expanding the area that our internet captures and our capability captures.
We have a fairly specific question from a viewer. What happens to third term finals and beginning of fourth term for middle and high schoolers?
That's an interesting question because we don't know exactly what instruction is going to look like. We're going to have those answers in the next couple of days, but right now I would consider those to be suspended.
Thank you.
Will
Yes.
parts of the curriculum get cut out necessarily, or maybe try to jam pack it all in when you guys get back to the building?
Well, as a matter of fact, we just had that conversation with area superintendents. The idea is to get as much in as we possibly can. We certainly don't want to rush through anything. We have learning standards that we have to adhere to, not only from a state perspective, but our second graders have to be ready for third grade, and our 10th graders have to be, our algebra students have to be ready for geometry, and we can't rush through that material. There are a number of scenarios. There are some where perhaps we lengthen our school days, similar to what we did last year, add some school days at the end of the school year, as we talked a little bit earlier. There's even some conversation at the state level of perhaps extending the school year next year to play catch up a little bit. So, again, it's a very fluid situation. There's no specific answer to that, but right now we're all exploring what the options and opportunities are ahead of us. And ideally, as a state, we would be somewhat uniform in how we apply all of that when you consider that we all take the same state test at the same time and things like that. So we'll be taking a great deal of guidance from our state officials to see what they say also. I know another piece that we're considering to try and buy some more instructional time for our students is suspending some of our internal assessments that we have for students that certainly take a great deal of amount of time when it comes to certain days and taking them away from their classroom. We're going to do everything that we can as a school system when the students return to maximize the instructional time for our students between now and the end of the year, and perhaps even add some more next year. We have some opportunities there.
For students with IEPs or students with speech and motor therapy, what might next school be like for them?
And you know what, that's a critically important question as we look to see what sort of instructional delivery model we can put in place over the course of the next 3 weeks. We have obviously a number of students with IEPs that go beyond what you've just described, and it's very important as a system that we provide learning opportunities for all students, so access and equity. And we're asking for guidance from the state. This morning they have an 11 o'clock conference call with the AEAs, and we've asked the AEA to ask just that question. How do we manage the IEPs in a way where we meet the expectations not only for the students' IEP goals, but also from a state perspective, while at the same time trying to manage as best we can the breadth of students that we have in this district that are just looking for learning opportunities. You can imagine it's quite a challenge trying to manage all of that, but that's a legitimate question that we've spent quite a bit of time on already. We just need a decision from a higher authority on that.
Are you guys working with mentor schools and Pleasant Valley schools and mimicking what they do, so it's kind of across the board for Iowa students, or?
We're working very closely. I've spoken with all the superintendents every single day for the last week and a half, and one of the things that we're committed to is to try and be as consistent as we possibly can. We agree on, I would say, probably 90% of the topics that we've talked about today, and maybe 10% there's still some way to differentiate, with communities being a little bit different in how they manage things and how those communities are different. So we're working very closely, and we will continue to do so to try and have that consistency so that you don't see a great deal of variability in learning opportunities, as well as some consistency in terms of how do we take care of our employee base. We want to make sure that our employees, they're family to us, and I'm sure they are. My other superintendent colleagues would say the same. How do we take care of them during this time so that we don't lose them and they don't go off to another state and take another job somewhere else or go into a different industry and all of a sudden now we have a labor shortage? So those are the types of conversations we're having locally to see how we can support each other, and we can do that by being consistent in our messaging and our decision making.
And your current custodial staff is the one cleaning the buildings?
Currently, and we also have outsourced additional services that are coming in to help with that also, just to make sure that they're getting the extra deep cleaning that they need. But they do that on a cycle of every 72 hours, so they're quite busy.
Do you think Governor Reynolds should have mandated across the state that schools close rather than a recommendation to keep districts, across the board kind of on the same page curriculum-wise and where students are the year?
I'm not going to second guess the governor on her language for that. I'll just say that I accepted her recommendation.
What precautions precautions are the custodial staff taking to keep safe while they're cleaning?
So we have standard procedures that we use that are part of our emergency operation plan for our custodians in terms of self-protecting gear and managing their own personal safety, especially with the gear that they use moving forward. But again, also practicing those safe habits that we are all practicing from this point in time. You know, the social distancing when you're off hours, washing hands all the time. So in addition to the safe gear and attire that they're wearing as they go through the buildings, we have special disinfectants that we ordered just for this particular purpose, hoping to keep them just as safe as we are.
We have time for one more question if anyone has one. If not, all right.
Okay, all right, everyone, be safe. We'll stay in touch. Thank you for coming.